This is Westminster School, and it's just break time is just finished, and the kids, you can see one there going to her class, and some teachers and things. This part of the school wall is made from flint, so it would be fairly old, and there seems to be like the main entrance over there to the school. And the school faces onto quite a nice green square, and then right there is Westminster Abbey. So this is where Lawrence of Arabia wrote his 7 Pillars, and in this room here, this is just behind Westminster School, and this is where friends of Bev's were teachers at Westminster School and lived, just around the corner from the school entrance. This is an unusual view, and this is Westminster Abbey with the 2 towers, and then looking through at one of the towers of Westminster Parliament, and then on the right is Westminster School. So it's an unusual collection of views. We've just been for a coffee, and today there is the 13th of September, just so as you know. And interestingly, you know, so close to the crowds and crowds of people there. Have a look at this. Not a soul. Well, not a soul, you know what I mean, comparatively speaking. Very few people, just tour buses parked off the side, and we went for a coffee down the road there. And if it weren't for the crane, you'd probably step back in time 50 or 100 years. It's all been kept just like it was. And then the large parade ground in front here. Okay, so this cast commemorates the breaking of the siege of Cadiz by the Duke of Wellington, no other. And it's in this courtyard that I showed you earlier. And over here you'd be interested to see is the one and only General Roberts of Boer War fame, who handed over to Kitchener to finish the job. So that's a panel depicting the death of Nelson, and underneath it says England expects him to do his duty, and that's Nelson being couched between 2 in the broken mast. And then if you go up to the top, the very, very top, which is such a pity, you need a helicopter really. There's the man himself gazing out over London. It's quite a column. It looks like granite to me from here. Yes, it is, it's grey granite. Okay, so here's a rare sight. This is one of the panels on Nelson's column. And there is a pigeon perched on one of the heads of the figures. And when I was last in Trafalgar Square, there were thousands of pigeons here. People used to feed them. And you can see what they've done. As they've put these very fine needle structures all over the place. You can hardly see them. But they must be very, very sharp, because that's certainly a major discouragement for pigeons. And then I don't think you're allowed to feed pigeons here anymore, so as I say, that's a fairly rare looking pigeon. There are a couple down here pecking away, but slim pickings for pigeons here these days. And I'm standing with my back to Nelson's column, more or less, and right on the other side there is the National Gallery over there. And I think on the right is the Portrait Gallery, and that's where we headed to see portraits of some people that we would like to follow. Profile like that are just magnificent, really. They're huge. And why shouldn't people climb all over them? The Red London bus. Which is South Africa House, I think is that one over there, South Africa House. And you can see that from above the posts, you can see a ship and something that says Cape of Good Hope. looking at the face that changed biology forever. We're in the National Portrait Gallery, and this is a portrait of Charles Darwin. This is Isambard Kingdon Brunel, famous engineer, very famous. This is T.H. Huxley, otherwise known as Darwin's bulldog. And this is Michael Faraday, as a relatively young man. And of course, who could fail to recognize the steely-eyed Lord Kitchener, inventor of concentration camps? There she is, George Eliot, otherwise known as Mary Ann Evans, 1819 to 1880. An absolutely fantastic portrait of Nelson Mandela. They got him beautifully. Unlike in Glasgow, the one in Glasgow wasn't as good as this one. This is the Duke of Wellington, painted by Goya in the National Gallery, with a very peculiar look on his face. We're in the National Gallery, and this is one of my favourite Turner paintings of two Dutch boats about to collide on a stormy sea. Sculpture under the portico of St. Martin's in the Field, and it's called In the Beginning. And if you look around, you can see I'm under this portico with the Greek columns, and then we've just been to a choral recital of sorts inside the church through there. We're waiting for our King Lear performance with Ian McKellen. It's about 6:15 on the 13th of September, and it starts at 7, so we should go in about 15 minutes time, find our seats and relax. We've been on the go all day. We've been through Trafalgar Square, National Gallery, Portrait Gallery. But here's a lovely evening view of the spire of St. Martin's in the Field, and then this rather ornate theatre called the Colosseum, with the rotating ball on the top with little cherubs holding it up. It's quite sweet. And lots of people out, because being the West End, lots of theatres everywhere and lots of pubs and whatnot to give you something to drink before the performance and afterwards. In the British Museum of Natural History, on this sort of walkway across the top of the gallery, and you can see amazing detail of the pillars. It's very, very ornate, this place, and stained glass windows up the other end again, and then once again it's Darwin sitting in the sunlight at the bottom of the ceiling. It's very ornate. There's the beetle brow of Darwin. The Foundling Hospital in London, from the late 1700s, a time when children were being abandoned by their parents because the parents were just too poor. And the hospital was founded by a ship's captain called Thomas Coram. Here he is here. And you can't actually see him, I'll just go a bit closer. And he noticed that all these children, and he took them off the streets. And then to fund the hospital, he collaborated with Hogarth, the artist, Handel, and they had people donating works of art, and wealthy people came to the hospital to see the art and then donated money to the hospital. And Handel actually donated the revenue from the Messiah to the hospital. So this is the original courtroom in the Foundling Hospital with the art that was donated by various individuals as well as artists. And what the idea was, wealthy people would come to see the art, and in the process they would donate money for the privilege of seeing these works of art. And this was called the courtroom. It's got an amazing ceiling with mouldings, and presumably they would have held meetings in this room, so it's got a huge carpet. So at the Foundling Hospital. It's the British Museum on a Sunday afternoon. I won't even mention the fact of the crowds, but this is the sort of Greek colonnades with the post and lintel and the frieze in the top there. And huge, those are actually sandstone, carved out of sandstone, which is pretty impressive. And give you some idea of scale, there's Bev on the steps. Just to give you some idea of the scale of those columns, they're enormous. Okay. The reflection is unfortunate, but there's a platypus in the British Museum, so it must be one of the earliest ones collected. And we're in the gallery called Collector's Gallery, and it's just collections from, you name it, ceramics, animals, shells, books, and so it goes, all people's private collections, stretching all the way down there, all the cabinets. To see that their collections were then, presumably when they died, they donated them to the British Museum and so on. Just a whole, well, variety of things that people collected. And for example here, which is hard to see, underneath here for example, is the jaw of some enormous, I can only say mammal because those are mammalian teeth. So it's the jawbone of some enormous mammal. The same here. It's like an elephant type creature. And so on. You know, you could go on and on. Collections of all sorts of fossils. And so on. Brachiopods, belemnites, ammonites. You could go nuts here. Completely mad. Very old paving things here. And this is the old Covent Garden, but it's been completely renovated and gentrified. The typical Victorian arches over the top. The shops are very much premier, you know, premier type shops at the bottom. No more cabbages here. In the South Hall of Covent Garden. And that's a restaurant down there. I don't know how much of it you can see. Yeah, see the folks down there. Shops. And then shops. And then of course the old covered over Covent Garden markets. Steel girders. Wow.